Okay, then I want to continue today. Remember we did last week the research process, and the research process starts with the title and the problem. That is what we've already done. That is what you are currently busy with, which you are submitting on Thursday. That was step 1 in the process. Step 2, you need to read also literature. You need to do a literature review. So you've read already, but we're going to go back to that step a bit later. But you had already, you needed to read in order to write the problem statement. Am I right? So that's part of the literature review that you've done. Okay? Now we are at step 3. So we're going to come back to step 2 later. I first want to go to this step because this is the next assignment as well. The next assignment or the next step in our process, you need to be able to write a feasible research proposal. And this is assignment number 2 as well. Let's look at the outcomes. You need to be able to identify the steps in designing a research proposal. In other words, how am I going to go about in writing the proposal? You need to be able to describe the outline. There is a certain format that we prescribed for the proposal. We call that the outline. And you need to be able to fill your research project's detail into that outline. You need to be able to demonstrate the different aspects of a research proposal and apply that practically to your own title and topic that you've chosen or that was assigned to you. You need to explain what is meant by a conceptual framework. We're going to go through that today. And then lastly, this is the assignment. You need to be able to design your own research proposal. So basically what I want to do today, I want to explain to you what is a research proposal, what are the components of a research proposal, and how do you go about in writing your own research proposal. In short, that is what we will be dealing with today. Firstly, we need to know what is a research proposal. So I have referred to this concept before. The research proposal is your plan on how you are going to conduct your research. So there it says it's a clear, detailed description of all the steps you intend to follow to complete your research project. So you need to explain, starting with the title, what is the problem, what is your objectives, how are you going to find a solution for your problem. So in other words, the methods that you are going to use. All of this is contained in a problem statement. This is your plan. This is your Bible for your project. You can adjust it as you go along, but this is the first step. If you, as a student, let's say some of you want to go into a master's after you've done your BTech, you are interested in the field of research, you want to pursue a master's degree or an MTech degree. You are going to first have to find the problem and read about that problem, and then you are going to draft a proposal. And that proposal is going to serve as a committee in the Department of Tourism, Hospitality and Public Relations. The committee will read your proposal and determine, is this a feasible proposal? Is there a real problem to this proposal? Is the methods feasible in this proposal? Okay? So the committee decides about that. Then the committee approve or disapprove the proposal based on what you've written. Okay, so that is the first step that you need to do. You have to write the proposal if you want to go further. So for BTech, we also start then with writing your plan for your research. Even if you conduct research as a consultant to other companies, if you're a consultant and you are requested to do some research for the company, then you will also have to start with a proposal which the company needs to go through and approve that they agree on the methods that you want to use and that you will be able to find a solution for the problems that they are facing. So proposal is critical both for companies and tertiary institutions in terms of guiding your research process. All right. So what does the research proposal include? A good research proposal provides information regarding what you propose to study. So it's your title, what is it that you're looking at? The topic, it gives the topic and the title of your study. The purpose or the objectives, Remember the primary objective and the secondary objectives, it comes into the proposal. I'm going to show you later where in the proposal. You need to explain in that proposal, why is this a topic worth studying? Is this a topic that is relevant? Is this a topic where there are certain challenges with that needs to be addressed? You need to explain the importance. Remember also in the problem statement, you also indicate some aspects about the importance of your topic or title. That comes into the proposal as well. You need to indicate the problem which you will solve through your research, so that is your problem statement. So you're going to copy your problem statement as well from your assignment 1 into your proposal. You need to provide some background of the topic, so you need to define the concepts that you are working with. For example, if you are working with customer satisfaction, that needs to be defined. You need to explain what research has been done about customer satisfaction. Provide some background about the topic. The proposed units of analysis, or who is your population, who is your respondents to your research, who's going to complete your questionnaire, with who are you going to conduct your interviews. Those are your units of analysis. That's the respondents or the participants of your research. That needs to be indicated in your proposal. The context of your study, where did the research take place? In which sector did the research take place? Was it a local study, an international study? Was it in the banking sector, retail sector, tourism sector, communication sector, education sector? Contextualize the study, where it's going to take place. And what methods of sampling are you going to use? We get different methods of sampling. We are still going to do that. But you need to say, how are you going to choose the respondents to your study? How many respondents do you need to participate? And how are you going to choose them? And that is the sampling, because you cannot target an entire population. You need to sample from them into a smaller group, which shares at least one characteristic. We're going to come to that. And, okay, well, that's the methods. Let's just go on. Data collection. How are you going to collect your data? Are you using questionnaires, surveys, interviews, focus groups? What are you using? How are you going to analyze the data? Are you making use of statistical software, Excel spreadsheets? How are you analyzing the data, and how are you presenting the data? Tables, graphs, figures, how are you going to present that? That needs to be indicated in your proposal. How will you validate the findings to avoid bias? So how will you prove that your findings are correct without your own prejudices and so on getting in the way? How are you addressing ethical issues in your study? How will you protect the anonymity of the respondents, keeping their names hidden? The participants, we need to protect their identities. The feasibility of your study from a resource perspective, you need to indicate if you have the resources. Do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have the knowledge to do the specific study? What are the limitations? We're going to get to that. And how does this study contribute to the knowledge or the theoretical body of knowledge that currently exists? So all of these things must come into a proposal. So let's just look at the different steps. There are 3 steps in designing your proposal. You have to select a focus and write your statement of purpose. So that's where we are starting. You've written now your problem statement. You select also a focus. You have a title, you have a topic, and you have a problem statement by this stage. So that is why, if you know what your problem is, then you will be able to solve your problem. You will be able to find methods by which you can solve your particular problem. And then you have to formulate your research question that you have already done. And then you have to conduct the preliminary literature review. So you are currently busy reading, and you will continue to read through this year. But this is needed for your proposal. So let's just look at step 1 again. Selecting a focus and writing your problem statement. Decide on the focus of your research. That is your topic and your title. Write your problem statement. The problem statement, like we've done, the 2 paragraphs, And the purpose, the primary objective, you have to put into your proposal as well. The purpose of the proposed study is to determine customer satisfaction at establishments in the Vaal region or whatever the case might be. So that you've already done. Formulate the research questions. Primary question, this is the same as your objectives. Primary question linked to the title, you've already done that. It's a reformulation of the statement of purpose or of the title or of the objective. And the secondary research questions is linked to the primary research question. These are the questions you need to ask yourself in order to solve the main problem. So if you're doing customer satisfaction, you might want to find out what are the factors affecting customer satisfaction. That will be one of your secondary research questions. What are the factors affecting customer satisfaction? So that most of you have done because those are similar to the primary objective and the secondary objective of your study. And now you are reading, you are doing your literature review. That is when you read the different literature on your topic. It provides an overview of relevant and current information about your research topic. And from this you have already, hopefully by this stage, identified the gap or the problem in the literature. So this can be a methodological weakness. So you might have seen in terms of method there are shortcomings. Say for example the majority of studies focusing on customer satisfaction took a qualitative approach based on what you've read. However, none of these studies took a quantitative approach. Then you can argue there's a gap because no studies focused quantitatively on the specific problem of customer satisfaction. So that's methods. Things like qualitative and quantitative design, survey design, interview, that's a methodological weakness. If you see that most studies focused only from a qualitative perspective, maybe there needs to be a study focusing on a quantitative perspective on the topic. Contextual weaknesses, we've talked about that as well. There might be problems in terms of context. Perhaps the study has only been done in the terms of internationally, but none locally, then that's a contextual problem and a contextual gap that you can identify, and then you can say that is the problem of your research that you will try to solve. Or a conceptual weakness, maybe, remember I gave the example, in customer satisfaction, the majority of studies only focused on what makes customers satisfied, but what about the concept of customer loyalty? Has that been focused on? That is another concept, and that can be a conceptual weakness or a gap, a conceptual gap. So we've done that already. So now you can start drafting your proposal because we've done those first 3 steps. We've looked at the title and the topics, that is the focus of your research. We have identified the purpose statement or the problem statement, and we have read some literature to identify specific gaps in knowledge. So now we can go on in drafting our proposal. So the proposal has a certain outline that you need to follow. These are the headings of your proposal. I'm going to post also on Vutela a template. You're going to fill in your research information, your project's information into that template. On this presentation, I have just listed now the specific headings, and we're going to go through each one of them, but it starts then with an introduction, rationale and motivation, problem statement, research objectives, importance of study, research design, which has a number of things. We're going to go through each of them. Definition of concepts, and then preliminary chapter outline. So let's go through each of those headings. Heading number 1, in your proposal, it's going to be your introduction, or you can call it the background to your study. This is where you provide the context of your study. You provide the definition of your study or of the keywords of your studies. You have to locate the research in the wider subject area by giving an overview of your topic. So, what is customer satisfaction? Why is it important? What studies has been done on customer satisfaction? What affects customer satisfaction, and so on. Those things need to be brought into the background of the study. That is the contextualization, giving the definitions, telling me where the studies has been done, telling me what the studies was about, what did the researchers find from these studies. That is the background to the study. it justifies. It tells me that this study is important and that there also is a problem. So a bit of the problem can also reflect here in your background of the study. It refers to literature on the topic and indicate what has not been said. So it indicates some of the gap, and it shows clearly how the research will fill the gap. Okay, so this will be heading number 1. So typically your background to the study, I would say no longer than 2 pages if you do your background to your study. You can 2 pages for the background. This is not yet your problem statement, but it contains elements of the problem statement. Heading number 2 is your rationale and motivation. In your proposal, you need to include a statement saying or stating the importance and the reasons behind doing this research. So it is a statement of how the researcher developed an interest in a particular area. So you might say, as the researcher, you were interested in the field of marketing because A, B, and C. Why are you interested in this specific topic? So that's why we say you may also motivate your research based on what you've seen or experienced, and also based on what your interests are. And it also contains exactly why a researcher believes the research is worth doing. So you also need to bring again in here some reasons why the research is important. When the motivation is read, the reader must become acutely aware of the magnitude of the problem and how the environment will benefit from the solution. So in the rationale and motivation, I want to see, yes, this is a real problem. This research is important because it will solve a real problem, and industry or a certain sector will benefit from the research that you are going to conduct. And that must be included in the rationale and motivation, and this is usually a paragraph long. 1 paragraph. So the motivation includes some immediate background of the problem. So you will start with something, customer satisfaction, or there are some issues regards to customer satisfaction in the current context of South Africa. Okay, that can be a start, for example. You need to indicate the implications if the problem is not solved. What is going to happen if we do not address the issue of customer satisfaction? What is then going to happen if we don't solve that problem? Mediocre levels of service levels will still be offered then in South Africa, and that will cause a decline in demand, for example, if we do not solve the problem. You need to describe the method for the solution. Briefly, how will you solve the problem and what benefits will come from solving the problem. So if we can address the issue of customer satisfaction, we will be able to increase the demand for a specific product or service. So what benefits will come from your solutions? And also the feasibility of the solution. Is this a solution that can be practically implemented by industry or by organizations so that they can actually improve their satisfaction levels or whatever your topic is about? And also this motivation, there I say no longer than 1 page, but 1 paragraph, it's also fine for this. It needs to be short and strong, to the point. I can show you just an example, but the example that I have is of a master's student. Okay, we can just read this example again. This is the example that I used also in the previous class. It's about the key success factors for marketing a tourism establishment in Lesotho specifically. So in the context of Lesotho, marketing of tourism is an issue or a challenge. And here she says, according to Odenyo, the key success factors for marketing an organization, here she gives the background. Can you see, are those competitive factors that affects a company's ability to prosper in the market. In addition, Engelbrecht defined key success factors as the areas within the organization that are needed by management to accomplish its mission. So that tells me that this is important. She goes on with the importance, saying the importance of key success factors for managing and marketing an organization has been noted in several studies. She says also, who says that? For example, Howell confirms that the key success factors provide excellent focus for beginning implementation of an improvement. And it also reduces the risk of failure. So that also gives me the importance of this. In addition, it allows the organizations to plan strategic initiatives directed at increasing their success to maintain quality. An understanding of key success factors for marketing a tourism establishment. What will this do for industry? It will enable tourism organizations to survive present and future challenges from the macro environment. So therefore, she says also Lesotho must pay specific attention to the key success factors in order to gain a competitive advantage. And therefore, this study will provide marketers with insights in terms of marketing. That is an example of a motivation. So that motivation includes elements of what we've said. She gave background to the problem also by saying key success factors and that there are challenges in Lesotho. She said that this problem is not yet solved because there are challenges in terms of this, and literature has focused on this as well. She said, she did not really say something about her method, but she did say what she needs to address in order to find a solution. She needs to determine what are the key success factors, and that is also a part of her method. She said what was the benefits. They will gain a competitive advantage if they look at that. And feasibility, she said, if they implement this, they will be able to be more effective in future. So that problem statement covered all of these components. So when you write that motivation, when you write your motivation, you can go back to these 5 points and see if your motivation meets the criteria for this. So this comes into the proposal. That is heading number 2. So your first heading is the background to your problem or the background to your study. The second heading is the rationale or motivation. And then the third heading is your problem statement. Now for this section, you go back to the assignment number 1. You copy your problem statement, you paste it in here. You've already done that. Okay, so you're just going to copy and paste. But what's going to happen now? You're going to submit your problem statement and we are going to mark it. And your mentor is also going to mark it. We're going to make comments on the problem statement. We're going to send it back to you, or you will be able to see our comments, okay? You need to implement those comments for this. Okay, so before you just copy and paste now what you've done, wait for the comments after we have marked your assignment once so that you can copy the correct ones and the improved one in here in your proposal. Okay. So I'm not going to discuss problem statement again because we've done that. Also, you get your research objectives from assignment 1, so that you also copy from your assignment 1. Both the primary and the secondary objectives will come into the proposal, just as you've done with your assignment 1. So again, it's a copy and paste action. All right. The next heading, you can write about the importance of the study. Just one paragraph. What does this study practically mean for industry, the significance? One paragraph. I also have the example of that. If we go back to this example, she bulleted the importance of the study, and this is practical importance. This study will be of importance in terms of the following. The results. What will you use the results for? This study's results will be used to make an important contribution towards current literature, so it's contributing to the knowledge, okay, of your topic. The findings will assist tourism marketers to identify and improve key success factors. The results will be useful for building a competitive environment, and recommendations of this study will contribute to the improvement of marketing. So something in the line of that where you emphasize the practical significance of your study. What will your results benefit? Industry. Then we come to the next heading. That is the research design. And this is a very important part of your study, because here you are going to explain to me exactly what is it that you are going to do, step by step, which methods are you going to use and why are you using these methods and what does your methods mean. Okay, so the research design, we call that part of the research design. It refers to the methods that you are using or research methodology. Okay. And this delineates the research clearly. It shows exactly what you're going to do in a precise manner. So you need to decide, in order to solve your problem, are you making use of quantitative research or qualitative research? Descriptive, exploratory, or explanatory research. So let's go through those terms. So you are going to have research design, and you specifically have to tell me you are following either a quantitative or a qualitative approach. Firstly, that's the first thing that you need to indicate to me under research design. So let's just look, what is a quantitative approach or what is quantitative research? Now, quantitative research can include both experimental and also non-experimental research. I don't want to go into too much detail about experimental and non-experimental, but typically your quantitative approach is where you work with a large population or a large sample size, and you're gonna, mostly they focus with on quantitative research in terms of questionnaires, and you can draw statistical analysis from your quantitative research. So important considerations when we do quantitative research. You need to think about statistical procedures. What do you want to do with your research afterwards? How do you want to analyze it? Do you want to quantify in terms of numbers? To say 60% of respondents were female and 40% were male. Do you want to quantify? Do you want to do correlations? What is the influence of gender on customers' level of satisfaction? Does it have an influence? If you want to know if there's a correlation between gender and satisfaction, that needs to be built into the questionnaire. So whatever you decide you want to do, what the outcomes might possibly be, you need to build for that in your instrument or in your questionnaire. If you want to draw a correlation between age and the activities that they prefer, then you need to build that into your questionnaire. You need to ask respondents in which age category do you fall and which activities do you prefer, so that you can correlate the two. And that is part of statistical analysis. So there are various statistical analyses that we can do. On a BTech level, I do not expect you to be aware of things like factor analysis and t-test and ANOVA. Those are terms that you might come across when you read the articles, but those are typical statistical analysis, but you are not expected to be able to do those things. On a BTech level, what are you going to do? You're going to use your Excel spreadsheet. We're going to capture the data into that spreadsheet. From the spreadsheet, we're going to count. We're going to do the count, sum and count from the Excel sheets, and then you will draw graphs and charts from there on, okay? But you need to take this into account if you're going to go further with the master's level. You need to know what is it that you want to do with the data, because you need to take it into account as you design the measuring instruments. Also, statistical significance. When we design a questionnaire, we send the questionnaire to a statistician. That statistician is a professional. She checks the questionnaire to make sure that your questions are clear and that it is not double-barreled, for example, asking two things in one question, and the respondent won't know which one to answer. So a statistician will help us with that, and also to determine statistical significance. Then validity and reliability of an instrument needs to be considered in quantitative research. Reliability, if you use a questionnaire now on a sample and in a month's time you use that same questionnaire again on the same sample, will it produce the same results? If it does, then your questionnaire is reliable. If it's not going to produce the same results, then it's not a reliable instrument. So this is something that needs to be taken into account when designing your questionnaires or your instruments in quantitative research. And also the validity is very important of your instrument. Validity refers to, did the instrument measure what it was supposed to measure? If I'm saying I'm going to measure customer satisfaction, how do I measure customer satisfaction? I need to read in literature how it's measured, and that needs to come into the questionnaire. Okay. And validity is important to ensure that you actually measured the construct that you set out to measure. So that needs to be taken into account. So if you explain to me that you're going to use a quantitative approach, then you need to tell me how that you ensure reliability and validity of the questionnaire. You're not going to explain to me statistical procedures because it's not relevant on the BTech level, but if we go further, then that is relevant. One can also use a standardized questionnaire. What is a standardized questionnaire? That is a questionnaire that has already been tested and was found reliable and valid. So it was used in previous studies, maybe in different contexts, but you can also use a standardized questionnaire which you found from another study or from another researcher. So that can also be used in quantitative research. Qualitative research focuses more on smaller numbers. These are non-representative samples. We're going to get to sampling still, but not today. Small numbers, these are more your type of studies where you do the interviews, discussion groups, focus groups, open-ended questions. These are all qualitative type of studies. So you need to also think about the validity in terms of qualitative research. How will you increase the research trustworthiness? Because the moment that you do qualitative study, there is the bias from the researcher. The researcher's own preferences might interfere with the research process, and that can skew the data or the information that you get. So how are you going to increase trustworthiness? So you can look at things, you don't have to know all those things, but peer examination to make sure that it's valid and reliable, the methods that you've chosen. Are you going to work? So the first thing that you're going to tell me when you get to your research design, you're going to tell me you're either using a quantitative or a qualitative approach. Okay? Or you can use both, mixed method approach. If we use both, it's mixed method, both quantitative or qualitative. Then you're going to explain to me, if you say I'm using a quantitative approach, what is meant by that word quantitative? You have to define it. And then you have to give a reason why did you decide on using a quantitative approach. Okay, those three things need to be there. Quantitative or qualitative approach. Define. Support. Okay. In addition to that, that is the first component of research design. The second component, you need to decide, is it going to be a descriptive, an exploratory, or an explanatory design, research design. A descriptive design describes a phenomenon. For example, what are the living conditions of South African women who have little or no access to education? This question basically just asks us to describe what? The living condition of South African women who does not have access to education. So how does their living conditions look like? Where do they live? Describing the conditions where they live. What do they have access to where they live? Okay? So it describes a specific phenomenon. The phenomenon in this case is the living conditions. It's going to describe living conditions. So descriptive research is about describing. So you ask questions like what? Then we have exploratory research. That is where we gather new information about a topic that has not been researched before. For example, to what extent does South African media represent the interests of the majority group within South Africa? So we don't know the extent. What is unknown in this case? Unknown is the extent to which South African media represent the interest of the majority group. That is what's unknown, and exploratory research will uncover that extent. It will tell us what is the extent. That is why we're going to do exploratory research. And then the third one is explanatory research. It's to find an explanation for a specific phenomena. So why is something the way it is? For example, why is there such an alarming increase in child abuse in South Africa? It's going to explain the reasons why. Explanatory, explaining the reasons. So descriptive, describing conditions. Exploratory, uncovering information that we do not currently know. And explanatory, giving the reasons why something is like it is. So you're doing firstly either qualitative or quantitative research. Secondly, you're going to tell me the research is descriptive or exploratory or explanatory in nature. And then you have to explain what is meant by descriptive. If you say my research is a descriptive by nature, what is meant by descriptive? Why do you say that your research is descriptive? Now at this level, most of the research is descriptive at BTech level. You can also have all three of those. In my PhD, I had all three of those types of research, and I had to explain all three of them. On this level, most of it is descriptive by nature, because you are describing, for example, the demographics of a population. That is descriptive. You're describing what ages they are, what genders they are, how much they earn, for example. That is describing. All right. So two things what you have to tell me under research design is either quantitative or qualitative, and also is it descriptive, exploratory, or explanatory. After you've told me that in the proposal, you need to go on and explain to me about your sampling. Who is your population, your sample population? What is a population? It's the total group of people or the entities from whom information is required. Now let's take the example that I'm using about the key success factors for marketing a tourism establishment. Who's the population? Tourism establishments in Lesotho, it's entities. They are the population, okay? From that, we need to draw a sample. If you are going to municipalities in Gauteng, all the municipalities in Gauteng is then the population. If you are targeting the visitors to a guest house, then they are the population, but you need to draw a sample from them, a smaller group, all right. You need to indicate how you intend to sample your research. Now we get different methods of sampling. We are not going to get to that today, but there's a whole section, a whole chapter about sampling. Are you using non-probability sampling or are you using probability sampling, and why? We'll still get to that, but that needs to come into the proposal. Who are you sampling? Where are you finding your respondents? How are you going to target them? And when are you going to do this research? That's all part of your plan, all right, in your proposal. Explain sample selection and the context of the data collection, where you're going to get your respondents, how you're going to approach them, and those type of things. So you'll explain about non-probability or probability sampling. We'll still get to that. Then you need to also explain your measuring instrument and the pre-testing thereof. So what are you using to gather your information? What instruments are you using? Questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, those type of things. For each method, you mentioned you must say how you are going to collect your data. So if you are making use of both questionnaires and interviews, you need to tell me about how are you going to go about in conducting those interviews, and how are you going to go about in distributing the questionnaires or the surveys. So you need to explain your method behind distribution and interviewing and so on. Describe how you will obtain access to these data sources. So you might need permission to go to the municipality. You need permission to go to a festival to gather data from the respondents or the visitors there, or from the guest house, or from the restaurant or the hotel or whatever. How are you going to access them? Describe how the questionnaires are going to look. So you have to tell me you're going to have a section A in your questionnaire, it's going to measure this. You're going to have a section B, it's going to measure that. And then you also have to tell me when are you going to distribute your questionnaires and how are you going to pre-test. Remember we talked about the pilot testing. You need to pre-test your questionnaires on a group of people or experts in the field so that they can assist you in improving your questionnaires' reliability and validity as well. So you need to explain clearly your measuring instrument. We are still going to do a chapter also about measuring instruments. The next section in the proposal is the ethical considerations. Now, ethics is a very important component of research because we need to protect the people that is involved in the research, and we need to gain information or obtain permission from the establishments where we are conducting our research and consent from the respondents. So it is important also in your proposal to indicate how are you handling the ethics in your proposal. You have to protect as far as possible the identities of your respondents or of your participants. So you are not going to ask them to write their names and their cell phone numbers and email addresses on their questionnaires, or you're not going to write it down when you do the interviews, because we are trying to protect the identities of the respondents. That is an ethical issue. We don't want to make that information known to the public. Okay, so in ethics, we don't ask for identities. You might have to ask permission to conduct the research, either at the establishment, or you might have to ask the respondent, if it's individuals. They must give permission for you to do the research, or they must give permission to complete the survey that you're asking them or conducting the interview. Also, you have to familiarize yourself with the ethics policy of the institution. At VUT, we have an ethics policy, and all proposals goes through an ethical application where there's a committee checking the ethics of the proposal to see if the research will protect the identity of the respondents or the establishments or whatever. So you also need to explain now in your proposal the ethical principles and how you are protecting the anonymity, I can't say that word, of the respondents. Okay, so that comes into the proposal. Then you need to also describe data collection methods, how you intend to set about collecting the data to answer the research questions. Give an explanation. So how are you going to approach your respondents? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to obtain permission? What are you using? Interviews, observations, surveys, document analysis. Those are just examples of things that you can use to get the data. Keep the research question in mind, so it must be suitable. The method that you use to collect the data must be suitable to find an answer to the question, and you must quote relevant literature to support your choices. So if you are deciding on making use of interviews for your topic to answer your question, you need to indicate which other sources has also used interviews for that specific topic and why did you also use that. If you're using questionnaires, why are you using a questionnaire? What other studies has also used a questionnaire that are similar to yours, so that you can support your data collection methods. Then you have to explain how you're going to analyze your data. So in this section, that is what I've said. Quantitative studies, you will present your data in a quantifiable manner with numbers. Quantitative studies is associated with numbers, and qualitative data is mostly centered around themes. So you have to tell me how you're going to analyze your data. Remember, I said on BTech level, we're not going to go into statistical analysis really, but you're going to capture your data on Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, and you have to quantify the data from there, and from there you have to put the data into graphs, tables, and figures, which you are presenting in your document. So that you need to explain. You're going to tell me in your proposal, responses will be captured on Microsoft Excel. It will be analyzed by means of graphs and charts and tables. Successful data analysis depends on the thoroughness of the process followed, and data can be analyzed in more than one way. There are different social or statistical packages that we can use to do different statistical calculations for the data that we've gathered. The next section deals with the definition of concepts. Now here you have to provide definitions for the keywords that you are using. The keywords you find in your title. And in this section you need to define each keyword that is also part of your title, the keywords that you are using to search for literature. So you will write there, typically in tourism, tourist will be a keyword, tourism will be a keyword. And then what other variables are in your topic? If you have something like corporate social responsibility in your topic, then you need to define that, because you need to familiarize the reader with the definitions. I might not know, what do you see as tourism? So I want to see a definition of that. I might not know what is corporate social responsibility. I might need to see a definition of that. Okay, so you need to familiarize your reader with definitions and also tell the reader, for the purpose of this study, corporate social responsibility is seen as A, B, and C, or whatever. Okay, so it is the key terms in your title that you use. So you will have about four to five keywords that you need to define in this section. And then you're ending the proposal with an outline of the chapters. You need to explain now, what is this project going to look like? You will say chapter 1 gives background to the study and sets the problem, because that is what chapter 1 is. You will say chapter 2 is a literature review, contains a literature review about what? You need to indicate it there. Chapter 3 is the methodology used throughout the study. What methods did you use? And the chapter explains on that. Chapter 4 presents the results of the study. And chapter 5 draws the conclusions and make the recommendations of the study. So you end your proposal with that, indicating what the project is going to look like and what is to follow. Okay, so don't just write chapter 1, background to problem. You have to write at least 2 sentences for each of those things. What is contained in chapter 2, what is contained in chapter 3, what is contained in chapter 4 and 5. Okay, I just want to show you this is the template of the proposal that you are going to have to complete. This is your cover page. All this red things needs to be replaced with your information. Your title comes at the top there. And please make sure that you delete all the red on this, because sometimes students just add their things and they don't delete the red. And then I'm going to subtract marks if it's like that. So make sure that you add your degree there, your name, student number, lecturer, mentor, those things. And there is the outline. So can you see we've done all this? We've checked the background to the problem, rationale and motivation, problem statement, purpose of study, delimitations. The delimitations are the criteria. Who is included in your study and who is excluded from your study. So you might be targeting students who are studying tourism at VUT only in their first year. That is inclusion criteria. Delimitations, you're excluding everybody that is not studying tourism, that is not in their first year, that is not studying at VUT. Those are the delimitations. Concept clarification, we've done that, the definitions. Assumptions, we're not going to have assumptions. You don't have to do that. The conceptual framework, we're not going to have a separate heading, but the conceptual framework refers to the background where you contextualize your research, and we have done the importance of the study. So I will post for you the template on Vutela. I just want to check this one. The proposal, she's asking how many pages. The proposal is about 15. 15, 1-5. And it also ends, remember, with the reference list. Here you can see a background to the research, rationale, problem, objectives, importance, design. So I will post you the exact headings that I want. I have specific headings that I want in a proposal. I'm going to create a template for that because I see it's a bit different in this one. But I want specific things from the BTech students. I will post that template and you need to complete your information in there. Okay, what do you want to ask? Okay, let's just say, I know there might be lots of questions when it comes to methods. How do I design a questionnaire? How do I conduct an interview? How do I do sampling? We are still going to do all of those things. We cannot do it all in once. Today's purpose was just to explain, this is a proposal and this is what it contains. Next week when we come to class, we are going to go deeper into what is qualitative research, what is quantitative research, how do I do a questionnaire. We've got these chapters on each of those things and we're going to go through each of them. As we go along, you can work on your proposal as well. For now, what can you do in your proposal? You can so long start with writing the background to your study. Because what do you need for that? Literature. So you can start with the background to your study. You have already started with your problem statements and your objectives. You're going to put that into this already. Okay. When it comes to design, I'm going to explain still. There's a chapter on quantitative research methods and qualitative research methods. This was just the introduction, all right?